Okay, so let's get going. Just to cover the agenda quickly, we will start with some introductions, and after that, I will give you a quick overview of uh, the sponsor, which is Swift Kanban and Digite, and then we will begin the main presentation, Kanban at Scale. After that, we will open it up for audience Q&A. Just to give you some housekeeping, nothing very unique. We will take the questions from the audience via the Q&A box that you should see on the right side of your screens. Feel free to enter the questions anytime during the webinar, and the, unless it is needed, we will take all the questions towards the end. Uh, we will try and group questions by topic if needed, although normally that is not needed. We will ask, try and ask all the cover all the questions that are asked. Uh, Also, the webinar will be recorded, so you don't need to be taking feverish notes. We will be sharing the slide deck as well as the recordings after the webinar is done. So with that, let me go ahead and start the presentation, start the introductions. So today's main speaker is Klaus Leopold. He's the founder and principal at Leanability. Uh, just to tell you a little bit about Klaus, he's a very well-known personality in Lean and Kanban circles in Europe. Uh, I've had the pleasure of interacting with him over several years whenever we have attended any Lean Kanban conference. And outside of that, he's the founder and principal at Leanability and a Kanban pioneer. He's really been one of the key guys contributing to the development of the Kanban method as applied to knowledge work, uh, and has worked closely with all other thought leaders in the field, David Anderson included. He's a practitioner himself, an author and a speaker. He has been a Brickell Key Award honoree. Brickell Key Award is the sort of highest Lean Kanban award that's been awarded at the Lean Kanban conference circuit worldwide. And of course, he's also a founding member of the Lean Kanban University, Lean Kanban Inc. He's written several books that you can see here, and I'm sure many in the audience are already quite familiar with it. Uh, my name is Mahesh Singh, and I'm a co-founder and senior vice president of product at Digite Swift Kanban. And once again, a very warm welcome to all of you who are attending this webinar. Before I turn over the webinar to Klaus, just a quick word about Digite. I won't take too much time. We've been around since 2002, and we've been a pioneer in a variety of collaborative production solutions for distributed technology and high-tech teams. We're headquartered in Cupertino, California, just a stone's throw away from the Apple campus, if some of you have been here. Uh, at this point, we have over 700,000 users around the world using our products, which cover Lean Kanban, Agile Application Lifecycle Management, project portfolio management, and global delivery of high-tech projects. And of course, Swift Kanban is our flagship Lean Kanban product. The other products that we have are Swift ALM and Swift Sync. Just to give you a little bit of introduction on Swift Kanban, it's a very visual, intuitive software, but at the same time, a very powerful software that implements the Kanban method and all of the Kanban analytics that people who are serious about implementing Kanban use or need. So, of course, a lot of our customers and users tend to be in software and IT teams, uh, and at the same time, we have a lot of other business functions using IT using Swift Kanban as well, and also you have a lot of personal Kanban users of Swift Kanban as well. So really a wide variety of users that have been using Swift Kanban. Uh, we provide a lot of rich analytics, as I just mentioned a few minutes ago. Besides all of the standard analytics that you would expect from a Kanban tool, we provide a lot of other interesting uh, analytics, and we'd be happy to talk to any of you who might be interested in learning about this in our product. Finally, just a quick look at some of our key customers, and we've been used by global brands all over the world. Uh, and sometimes it is enterprise implementations. Sometimes these are departmental implementations. But all of the people who typically use Kanban are very much uh, aligned to the Kanban way of thinking and lean uh, methods of working. and are using Swift Kanban to really further their overall lean initiatives. So with that, I'm going to hand over the control to Klaus. Klaus, a very warm welcome to you. And let me just make you presenter here. And there you go.
Perfect. Thank you, Mahesh. Thanks. I can see my slides.
Yes, I can see that.
Yes. Yeah, perfect. So, yeah, hello, everybody. Very warm welcome also from me here. So, as Mahesh already mentioned before, I'm going to talk a little bit about large-scale Kanban. And well, I actually want to share some kind of story or experience with you where I implemented Kanban in a more or less large, depends on what large really is, but on a more or less large environment, and maybe some learnings I've encountered here. Okay, so let's go ahead. Well, there was, and these guys wanted to introduce Kanban. Basically, they didn't want to introduce Kanban, but they were running a software development project, and it were yeah, roughly 200 people were working in this environment. And yeah, the setup of this project is nothing that I actually want to recommend or so, but it was basically a situation these guys were in. So it was roughly 200 people, so a quite large project. There was some kind of project management office with basically 6 project managers. There was one product team, which was not a real team. It was more like a virtual team. You know, there were delegates from different business units, which were basically responsible to yeah, define the features of the product. So we had business and marketing representatives in there, business analysts, architects, and this group was responsible to come up with the features for the product. Then we had 10 development teams with roughly 120 people. So the project was basically, or what were these guys doing? They were developing some kind of, how's it called? Some kind of shop application. So you could buy something, and you could buy it from an internet page, from a web page. You could buy it from an iPhone and from an Android cell phone. And there was also a physical shop where you could actually go there and buy the goods in the physical shop. And there was also, of course, some kind of application necessary to handle this thing. So this is the product that these guys were developing. And so we had a couple of teams, like web teams, iPhone teams, Android teams. And what you see here, they also had 2 back-end teams, which were basically responsible for implementing yeah, the back-end logic. Then these guys had 3 quality teams, QA teams, and 2 operation teams. Operation teams, they were responsible for the whole infrastructure, security, and so on and so on. So this was the environment this project was in. And the main dissatisfaction here was it was actually bad coordination. So it was like 200 people were busy working, and you could really see them typing on their keyboards. But in the end, these guys had no freaking clue where the whole project actually really is. So bad coordination was the main dissatisfaction. Of course, there were other dissatisfaction, like time to market could be better. Let me put it that way. So yeah, this was the situation these guys were in. And yes, what would you do in a situation like this? So this is the setup. So that's nothing that's on my wish list, that they should structure it like this, but that was their situation. Well, I've shared these examples with different audiences, and when I ask the question, what would you do, I get different answers. So if there's some kind of agile-ish, scrum-ish audience, the the answer is more or less clear. So what I often get as an answer is, these guys here, they have development teams, QA teams, ops teams. That's not cross-functional. So we need to do some kind of restructuring here. We need to reorganize these teams. We need cross-functional teams. And by the way, the teams are quite big, quite large. It's on average more than 10 people per team. That's also not so good. So we should work here, right? So let's build cross-functional teams, and let's downsize the number of teams. And we will pick some Scrum Masters here, maybe the team leader or so. They are becoming the Scrum Master. And here we have a product team. Product team is awesome when it comes to defining a PO, product owner. So we'll find some product owners here. And here we have the project management. Well, project managers and Scrum, yeah, they will find a different career, more or less. Yeah, so that's often the answer I get from Scrum people. If the audience is more like Lean Kanban guys, I get a different answer, but the answer is not so different. So the answer is more like, well, Kanban is this start where you are method, so we don't have cross-functional teams, so who cares? Let's start where these guys actually are. So we have, 15 teams here. Let's start with Kanban with these 15 teams. And it's a little bit different than the Scrum approach, but not that much actually. And I get this answer really quite a lot. And I think it's really a very, very good approach to start here with the teams if you are running a consulting business. If you're running a consulting business and you have the pleasure to train these 15 teams, and of course they need some coaching and so on, right? That's a good thing. It's quite a lot of billable days here, right? Not so bad. So a good approach if you are a consulting company. However, if you are running this project, it's maybe not the best way I actually would go. So a lot of people start on a team level, and I personally think there's one reason behind this, because there is this belief that all teams have to use Agile methods, right? So if all the teams are using one of these awesome Agile methods, we have an Agile organization. I think I don't think that's true. I don't think that you need a bunch of Agile teams if you want to run an Agile organization. Why? So let's assume we have in our organization, okay? And we want to become Agile. So the first way is we are doing, of course, a pilot. Okay, so we have a team here, and this team, wants to improve, wants to increase the performance. So there are quite a lot of super duper methods on the market. We see something like Kanban, we see Scrum, we see a lot of this stuff here, right? And well, let's apply one of these methods at this team. Okay, and if you do this, the chances are really very high that this team, the performance of this team, will increase. So that's nice, right? Now we have a team, the performance increased, so this method, whatever the method was, let's say Kanban or Scrum, it works. However, there are a couple more teams, right? And if it works for one team, chances are pretty high that it also works for the other teams. So let's just install your favorite method to all the other teams here. And then you have an agile organization, perfect organization. Well, I don't think that's true because of one thing. That's this. You have dependencies between these teams. So usually, if you are not working in a 10-person company, chances are very, very high that you need more than only one team to provide your service or to develop your product. You need multiple teams to fulfill the customer wish, right? And well, this is true for software development, of course, but it's not only software development. Think of business, for instance. Think of marketing, of the sales guys. You need quite a lot of people and quite a lot of teams if you really want to fulfill the wish of a customer. And the point here is that I think that an organization is not a container. So if it would be a container of independent teams, you could just install your favorite method on each and every team, and you have a perfect company, right? But I think that's not true. And I always like to use a metaphor of a keyboard. It's a keyboard, okay? And we are in the writing business. So customers want something to write from us, we write letters for them, okay? Keyboard is our organization, so let's structure our organization. We have some teams, right? For instance, we have 4 teams, like one team using the ASDF keys and so on, okay? And now there comes a customer, and the customer wants us to write a love letter, right? So we need to figure it out how to do it, right? It's more than one team required to fulfill the wish, and in most realities, it's not only this, they are in a reality like this. They have for each and every key, you have a U team, you have an I team, an O team, yeah? And of course, each and every organization needs an awesome A team. Without A team, you're basically screwed, right? So yes, if this is our working environment, and now we're applying your favorite method on each and every team here. So you have the best K team you can imagine on this planet. You know, if these guys are hitting the K key, you could see smoke coming out of the keyboard. They are so freaking fast. What do you think? How much faster would we deliver our love letter? Yes. Not really, right? So when it comes to writing a letter, it's not about the performance. You can hit the key. It's more like pressing the right key to the right time. Doesn't have to be that fast, but if you hit the right key at the right time, you will deliver your letter much faster than only hitting very, very fast keys, right? Does it make sense? Okay, so if we transfer this idea to our environment, there's one guy called Russell Eckhoff who had a very nice quote for us. Russell Eckhoff says that the performance is the sum of its parts. It's the product of it, right? So the sum of its parts would be that you optimize each and every key on your keyboard. The product of its interaction, it's more like that you're hitting the right key to the right time, right? So it's not about having a lot of awesome high velocity, throughput, low lead time teams, okay? We need teams that are working to the right time on the right work item. That's what we want to make sure here, okay? So if we transfer this quote from Russell Eckhoff to this agility thing, we could say, agility of an org not having a lot of agile teams. It's having agile interactions between teams, right? So focus that people are working on the right thing to the right time, and do not optimize them, right? If you see the parts which are the single teams, this won't work. And I think it's Leopold who came up with this very nice example of a car. So if you could optimize the single parts of the system, it would be actually very, very easy to come up with the best car on this planet. You just need a bunch of engineers, automotive engineers, and you just set these engineers to the world, basically, and give them the exercise to find out what car parts are the best car parts on this planet. And they will probably come up with something like, in the Ferrari, we will find the best engine. In the Porsche, we will find the best transmission, and so on and so on. Then they just take these parts from the car and bring it to you in your garage. And in front of you, you will find the best car on this planet. Maybe. Maybe it's the best car, but it won't move a fucking inch, you know, because the parts don't fit together. That's the point here, okay? So don't optimize single parts of a system. So when we come back to our, why would you start on a team level? That's optimizing the single parts, right? We want to start with some improvement in this environment. You do good if you project level, okay? So if you are starting on a team level, what you're basically doing is you're optimizing your organizational structure. However, you want to optimize how you're creating value for your customers, because your customer don't give you money for your organizational structure. Your customer gives you money for receiving an awesome service. So optimize how you are creating value for your customer. And in this environment, you are creating value with the whole project, okay? So, yeah, and that's basically what I did in this environment. So I did not start on the team level, I started at the project level here, okay? And how did I do it? Well, I used Kanban for this. So I'm pretty sure that you guys are very familiar with Kanban. Nevertheless, I just want to show you, just want to give you an overview of what at least I think Kanban is. So if you take Kanban, there are 6 practices, right? Don't want to go into detail here. I think everybody knows the practices of Kanban. You know, it's a lot about visualization, like Mahesh showed in the beginning. You've seen some Kanban boards from Swift Kanban. So it's a lot about visualization, making your work visible. Another very important thing in Kanban is that you limit your work in progress, so don't work too much stuff at the same time. You want to manage your flow, establish flow, manage your flow, implement some feedback loops. And yeah, this is the 6 practices of Kanban. And when organizations are choosing to do Kanban, what they are doing is they're trying to make these practices work for them. Okay, so the practices of Kanban tell you what you are doing. Then there are some 3 principles, and these principles basically tell you how you are doing Kanban. Principles is about how. And in the principles of Kanban, yeah, they basically describe evolutionary improvement. So you start where you are and you evolve from there. That's the principles of Kanban. Okay, so if we summarize Kanban, okay, we see basically it, right? And if you take a closer look at the practices and principles, you don't see anything like apply this stuff on the team level or whatever, right? So these practices and principles, they don't recommend any organizational structure you have to apply them on, right? It's totally independent of how your organization is structured. So when it comes to introducing Kanban, oh, it's yeah, when it comes to introducing Kanban, you don't have to start on a team level, right? Because Kanban is definitely not a team method. However, Kanban works perfectly on a team level, but you don't have to apply it on a team level. So that's exactly what I did in this situation, right? So if you have the lever of applying Kanban outside of a team level, the project level, use this lever. Don't start on the team level. Use the highest lever you can have, and that's what I did in this project. So, how do you actually start in such an environment? Well, I mean, there are for sure a lot of ways. I can only tell you what my way was. So I followed two simple steps. The first step was focus on value creation. So in the beginning, we really thought, okay, there is no organization, there are no people, there's nothing, there is only the customer. And how are we generating value for our customer? That was the first question that we answered. And then we proceeded to the second. And the second question is that we figured out whom we needed to create this value. And then all these teams and departments and so on kicked in, basically, right? So focus on value creation and figure out whom you need. That's what we did. And how did we follow these two steps? Well, there were 200 people, and usually you do not build a Kanban system with 200 people. I mean, you need a really large room if you want to do this. So we've chosen a different approach. So what we did is we built a change team, and these guys a system. So we basically defined delegates who sponsored their knowledge, and with this knowledge, we built the Kanban system. Hierarchy bridging cross-functional means hierarchy bridging. Okay, we had it was not a workshop only for managers or so. It was really hierarchy bridging. So there were managers in there, but there were also people who were actually working, in this workshop, and it was cross-functional. So it was nothing that the project managers did for all the others. It was really, there were project managers in there, but you also had developers, testers, so it was really totally cross-functional. And if you get all these people in one room and they are building a Kanban system, the chances are really, really very high that you are pretty close to reality, that the output is pretty close to reality, what these guys are producing in the workshop. And yes, this hierarchy bridging and cross-functional change team, that's actually nothing that I invented or so. Probably you know John Cotter. John Cotter is, one could say a change management poet. And John Cotter would define this as a guiding coalition, hierarchy bridging cross-functional change team. Whenever it comes to approaching change, building this guiding coalition is really a very, very good practice. So you should really try it. It's a good thing. Okay, so now we had a so-called change team, and this change team was responsible more or less to build a Kanban system for all the 200 people. I think it was 12 people in this change team. So 12 people out of 200, that's good to go, actually. So, and what did these guys do? Well, as I said before, we followed 2 steps. We focused on value creation in the first step, then we figured out who we need to generate this value. So let's focus on value creation. This was the output of this change team. That's the common understanding of these guys, how they are creating value for the customers. I don't want to go into detail here, but just to give you a very quick overview, what these guys are doing is there's some kind of rough idea arriving at their at the input, and what they are doing is they are concretizing this idea, and the output is some kind of business epic. They call it business epic because it's epic, it's quite large, and business means it's potentially you could potentially sell it to a client. Okay, so we concretize ideas and define business epics, and then this vertical axis here of the flow chart is basically how these guys are developing the epic. And here they are shipping the epic. Okay, so that's how these guys think that they are creating value. And yeah, they shared this as a common knowledge, so chances are pretty high that this matches reality. So that was the first step. Second step was, who do we need for this? So what we did is we just added the teams to this graphic here, and we also we've also drawn some arrows which are, do we need knowledge from which team? And this was the output. Again, I don't want to go into detail here, but I think you can see one thing quite clearly. I think it's just a myth that developers are only developing and doing nothing else, or the business guys are only doing their business stuff and nothing else. So you really need a lot of knowledge in different parts of your value stream, of your value creation stream. And again, it was their common understanding that these guys are required in these different areas of the value creation process. And yeah, having this information, it's actually more or less easy to come up with a Kanban system out of this. So the Kanban system looked pretty similar to this, what you can see now here on this slide. So what was the Kanban system? This was the Kanban system for the project level. So this was really the system where these guys were coordinating the work for all the 200 people. Okay, so yeah, in the beginning you can see again the upstream work where these guys are concretizing ideas, defining business epics, and then they are reviewing. They're doing some kind of review for the business epics. And here you see this field like rejected. This means yeah, they're also rejecting ideas, which is actually a very good thing to do, to reject ideas as soon in your process as you can. Because if you are rejecting ideas here before they are being rolled out, that's probably quite expensive, right? So rejecting ideas and yeah, defining what they want to develop, actually, that's this part here. And then we see this ready for development queue. And here, yeah, the next epics are queued, okay? And then we see this, this column in development. And in this column in development, there's basically all the work of all developers in there, okay? So each and every team yeah, has its work in this in development column, okay? And when they are finished with developing, they're integrating it, testing it, and they're doing the rollout. Okay, so what you see quite often in Kanban systems at this level, that the work item type is transferred over time. So in the beginning, these guys are working on an idea. This idea is then transformed to this business epic, and then they are developing a bunch of business epics, and these business epics are bundled together or integrated to a, they call it program version, which is nothing else than just a release. Okay, so you will see this quite often, that the work item type is transformed. What else could we see here? Yeah, well, maybe one thing, there's a lying 8 on top of the ready for integration column. Lying 8 is usually very evil in Kanban systems. This means infinity. And if you have some kind of infinity buffer or queue in your system, your predictability is not really very good then. However, predictability was good here because the cadence behind this buffer. So what they did is these were the epics that were ready for integration, and whatever epics are in there on a Monday, they were being integrated, and each and every Wednesday they performed the rollout. They released the integrated epics. Okay, they didn't release it into the live system. They released it in some kind of staging environment. But okay, so there was some kind of cadence behind it, and then we have, of course, predictability again. Yeah. So that was basically, let's say, the motherboard. So here on this large board, you could find the work for all the 200 people. Okay. So what did we do so far? Level. So it was totally not mandatory that the teams are doing Kanban, right? So the teams, they were just working. But that's exactly what I wanted to emphasize in the beginning. So we did not improve team performance as a first step. In the first step, we said, okay, let's make sure that the teams are working on the right features to the right time. And that's exactly what we established with this board. Some of the teams even didn't know that that this was a Kanban board, right? So they were just receiving their work, and they were pretty happy, right? But then some teams came and they said, this whole thing here with this board, that's quite nice. Can we also do it on a team level? And we were, of course, like, yes, sure, right? So you could really see that the teams, they were pulling the change. They wanted to do it, and that's the best you can achieve, actually. And what we did then, of course, each and every team who wanted to do Kanban could do it. So we sponsored a system design workshop for each and every team. Okay. Well, by the way, this board or this pattern, what I've shown you just before, is also a very, very good way if there are multiple Scrum teams. And I mean, there are products on this planet which is where you need more than only one Scrum team, right? You could use this pattern, and they could coordinate their work with Scrum too. I've quite a lot of experience and success actually in Scrum environments where people don't want to do the Scrum or so, but they are coordinating their work with a Kanban system. So Kanban and Scrum is not either or, it also works perfectly together. Okay, but where am I in my story? Yes, teams pulled change, right? So they wanted to do Kanban, and we were like, yes, sure. So the teams started with Kanban on a team level. And the point here is that each and every team, they build their own Kanban system. I think it's really, you can't do a lot of wrong when it comes to doing Kanban. However, one thing which is, at least in my opinion, definitely wrong is if you copy the boards. You know, like there's this team, and this is a development team, and there's another team, it's also a development team. So just take their board. This doesn't make, this won't work actually. So each and every team needs to build their own system, and that's what these guys team port. Yeah, that's a development team, and what we see here is we basically have two swim lanes. There's this horizontal separation of the board, and on each and every swim lane, it's only allowed to have one epic. So you basically assign one of these business epics to one swim lane. So the number of epics is limited by the number of swim lanes, right? And yes, each and every epic is then split into smaller pieces, because an epic is quite big. So they chopped it down to so-called task stories, which is some kind of mixture between task and user story, as the name says, right? And then here on the swim lane, the task stories are moving up to this field, like waiting for epic, because yeah, they collect all the task stories in this field, and until all task stories are finished, and then they move the epic to the waiting for epic column, and then the epic moves over the board. So they are reviewing the whole epic then, okay? And yeah, after the review, the work of this team is done. So what they do, they tell the motherboard that they are finished with an epic, and on the motherboard, so the big project board, they are moving the epic then, okay? So they are finished with their work. However, you see that there are two more columns on the board of this team. And I really like this, because what they are visualizing here is potential demand. You know, after they are finished with developing, there is this integration going on, and there's the user acceptance test going on. And nobody says that everything works without any bugs and defects here. And they would just want to make visible that there's potential risk, right? So chances are pretty high that we need to work on this epic again, okay? So that's the reason why they basically visualized it as potential demand on their team board. Yes, so this was the board on the team level. And yeah, we've seen the big board, we have seen one of the team boards. Yes, we need one more thing, which is the coordination. Remember, we only started on the project level, which is 200 people, right? And these 200 people, they were doing stand-up meetings. But it was not 200 people standing in front of a wall and having a discussion. They did the stand-up meeting with delegates. So all the teams or different groups in this project, they defined delegates who were coordinating the work with the other delegates in front of the big board. So it was, how much is it? It was 13, 14 people or so who were coordinating the work in front of the board. Then these guys went back to their teams, and they were having another stand-up meeting, maybe in their team. And yeah, that's how they coordinated the work for the 200 people. What they also did from on is that they were doing project improvements. So again, there was no team infrastructure there in the beginning. So each and every improvement meeting was a project improvement meeting. And it basically worked pretty much the same like the stand-up meetings. So all the teams, they sent delegates to the improvement meeting, and in the improvement meeting, they were improving the way of how they are running the project. Okay, so after the first teams started to work with Kanban, they started with stand-up meetings on the team level. Usually it was like first you had the large stand-up meeting with the delegates, and then they did the team stand-up meeting. And so the information, yeah, they were pretty much in sync. And with stand-up meetings, or after they started with Kanban on the team level, they also started with improvement meetings on the team level. Okay, but again, it was only after they started with Kanban on the team level. In the beginning, we only set up the infrastructure for the 200 people. Okay, yes, yeah, and yeah, that's basically how these guys were coordinating the work and how they were running the whole project, right? So what we've seen here is that you can apply Kanban on different levels in your organization, right? So if we remember back, the practices of Kanban, they tell you what you are doing. The principles tell you how you are doing it. And now we've seen that there are different locations where you can run Kanban, and this is the where question. Where are you doing Kanban in your organization? And the answer is, I think, at levels is a model which tells you where in your company you can use Kanban. And it's more like a communication model. I use it all the time when it comes to clarify where you want to start with Kanban and where you want to move to, basically. So where can you use Kanban? Well, there is flight level 4, which is the portfolio level. So you can apply Kanban on a portfolio level. In the portfolio, in your company's portfolio, you probably have some products, projects, initiatives. I don't know what's in your portfolio, right? But you can Kanbanize your portfolio or parts of your portfolio. Okay, that's flight level 4. Then you can zoom in into one of your portfolio elements, like for instance here in product A. One level lower, which is flight level 3, and flight level 3 focuses on the value stream. So in this example here, you're focusing on the value stream of a product or on the value stream of a project or whatever. Okay. The point on flight level 3 is that often or most of the time you have multiple teams, right, who are organizing their work together on flight level 3. So the emphasis is on the value stream. Okay, so on flight level 3, value stream, multiple teams, so you can zoom in again on flight level 3 and you can zoom, and the team level is flight level 2. So flight level 2 is a single team or service, and the point for flight level 2 is that this team is receiving and coordinate, and the input to this team is coordinated. Okay, so in this example here, they are receiving the input from a motherboard, from a flight level 3 board. Okay, but you can also imagine that there is no level 3 board. Maybe there is some kind of don't know, product owner, or you have a replenishment meeting in place or whatever, where these guys are receiving their input. So flight level 2 is team or single team or single service, and they are receiving coordinated input, and that's the difference to flight level 1. flight, you have an isolated team or service there. And the point is that these guys are not receiving coordinated input. So the input is uncoordinated. This means usually that they have a whole bunch of stakeholders here, and the stakeholders, they are basically pushing the work to this team, and these guys have to handle it. Okay. Yeah. So this is this is the flight levels of Kanban. So 1 to 4, and I use this picture or this poster quite often when it comes to clarify where you actually want to start Kanban in your organization. One thing is very important here. That's not a maturity model. Maturity model like level 4 is better than level 2 or so, right? It's more like a communication model. Level 4, I mean, it's not possible that level 4 is better than level 2 because it simply solves a different problem. So if you are having problems with your portfolio, it's probably not the smartest idea to introduce a team method, right? Or to introduce Kanban on a team level. So it's also a different problem. However, when it comes to the lever, when it comes to the impact, of course, the higher the flight level, the higher the impact you can have with your Kanban implementation. And the good thing here is that you can plug these flight levels together. And Mahesh will show some examples, some real-life examples actually, where where you can plug different flight levels together, and you have a really very nice coordination of the work going on there. Yes, and I think I'm way over time already. Yeah, that's basically everything I wanted to say. Maybe just a very short summary here. So what we've seen is a Kanban implementation on different levels. It was a quite large implementation with 200 people, but it was not a team implementation. So we started on a very high flight level, or very high. We started actually on flight level 3. It was the project board. And we also had some flight level 2 boards there, some team boards there, who were receiving work from the flight level 3, right? So in summary, that we Kanban guys are a little bit poor. We are a little bit poor because we cannot participate in this discussion which is currently going on. You know, this scaling agile and agile at scale and so on and so on. So everybody is doing scaling agile and so, and we cannot participate in this discussion because it doesn't make any sense in the Kanban world, because scalability in Kanban simply means doing real Kanban. So Kanban is in itself scalable. So the whole discussion is difficult for me, right? Do real Kanban at any scale in your organization, and you are just fine, and you don't need any scaling frameworks or so. Yes, so that's everything I wanted to say. Mahesh, you have some examples for the audience. Is this true?
Absolutely, Klaus. Thank you. That was awesome. I really enjoyed the talk just now. Thank you for doing that. Let me quickly show you some examples. I don't want to take too much time away from Q&A. We might run a little late, but hopefully not too much, and people will stay for the uh, for the rest of the presentation. So, just to give you a quick idea, uh, we of course support pretty much, I think, everything that Klaus talked about. So let me just jump into two scenarios. One is the portfolio management scenario, the flight levels that Klaus just talked about, and the ability of Swift Kanban to define boards at different levels. So here, I'm showing you a basic example of a portfolio board where you can track different initiatives, and each of these cards here represent an initiative. And I've circled the one that we will focus on as we drill down into this. So the portfolio board then leads to what we call a planning board. And in the planning board, you can have So initiatives are on the portfolio board. Here we define epics and features, and this terminology is something set up simply to demonstrate the capability. Obviously, the actual terminology will depend on the your context and your work, the product or the service being provided. And so here we have one of the epics that rolls into that initiative. And then you have the execution board, which is the last one that I will show here. And in that, one of the user stories is part of that overall hierarchy. And so, just to give you a quick idea of what Swift Kanban can help you in the coordination and in terms of information being shared across boards, um, you can see that the initiative, which is at the top level portfolio board, shows this little circle that shows that there is progress being done on this initiative. And if you drill down on this initiative, then you will see that these are the three epics that are being done, and two of them are 100% done. One of them is not yet started. So you have roughly 66%. That's one way to show this information. Another way is to look at the entire hierarchy, and as you can see here, I'm going to just click this and show you this as well. As you can see that the hierarchy shows you across different boards, from the portfolio board to the planning board to the execution board, the entire set of cards that are connected to each other in a single hierarchy. So you can see that this initiative is being done in these different epics and in features and in actually user stories that are being done in three different boards. And at this level, it is the high level planning and portfolio function, where a portfolio team might define the priority for the organization or for a department. And then at the lower level, you might have product teams that are looking at the epics and the user stories to be defined and prioritized. And then finally, the dev teams and the testing teams are working on their own boards with the actual user stories. So a lot of functionality here to really let you define the work the way you want to define. I will also give you a little bit of an example of what we do ourselves at Digite in terms of our Swift Kanban product development. We have it a little simpler. What we do is just a roadmap, which is like a planning board. I would put it as at a flight level 3 kind of a board, which is defining the product value stream of how we build Swift Kanban. And then a lower level flight level 2 board, which is for the dev and test team that does the actual development. Oops. Uh, so here you can see in the roadmap board that we have the ideas becoming user stories to be done. So we have what we call themes that are our priority themes that are tracked here. And under this, we of course directly expand from themes into either enhancements for existing stuff or user stories for new things that we do on the product. And once these are identified, we plan for them in terms of a release plan, which is plan 3 releases at a time. So we have a release after next, we have the next release, and then we have the current release that's going on. So everybody who wants to look at what's going on overall can track it at this board level. And we also keep for some time things that we have completed, so that if a customer wants to know, or if our CEO wants to know what's the overall team doing, then they can come and look at it here. The work that's going on in the in progress column here then expands into our dev board, and that entire workflow you can see here. And we do a test driven development approach, where our developers must do the automation of every function that they build, every feature that they build, and then it goes into a staging server for some time, where we do smoke testing, functional testing, etc. And then once it's stable, then it goes on to being deployed on production. So that's really the simple workflow that we follow. And again, between these two boards, there is interaction, there is hierarchy built in of the kind that I showed you earlier, and the status updates that go up to the roadmap board. Again, from a coordination perspective, I just wanted to show you quickly one of the hierarchies that is there from one theme to the underlying user stories. Uh, but the important thing also is that we also have a lot of coordination interaction that happens. One at the product roadmap level, which is a weekly process that happens, and we call it the weekly replenishment meeting. That's a combination of product management, sales, support, and our dev representatives. And we meet once a week to define what's going on, what needs to be planned, prioritized for the next week, and so forth. And also, we look at what is the overall trend in terms of what themes are important, what the themes need to be reprioritized or prioritized, and so forth. And obviously, at the dev team level, we do the daily stand up that that makes sure that anything that is coming in from customers, especially defects that might have been reported, both internal as well as customers, those are taken up on priority and fixed. And of course, the rest of the work proceeds as it is. And as work gets completed in the dev board, we you know report that progress going further upstream into the roadmap board. So that's a quick sort of overview of the kind of support that's available here. So at this point, I'll open it up for a Q&A. I know we are a little bit over time here, but we will still spend a couple of minutes. Um, I want to first take up a question that came up again about the coordination, because that, Klaus, you mentioned was a very a key aspect of the problem that the team was facing initially, that it was essentially a question of bad coordination. And one of the questions that come up here is that how does the change management team, that initial pilot team or the guiding team, how did they interact with the project Kanban board? What was the mechanism by which they interacted with the Kanban, with the project level Kanban board, and how it was then communicated with the team, with the individual teams?
Mhm. Okay, so in the beginning, there was no Kanban board, right? So they only sent delegates to the meeting, and they were doing the coordination on the big board. And whenever there was work available for them, like, you know, they pulled an item into the in development column, there was some kind of yeah, that was actually the point where the delegate not knew what was to do for the other guys. So he just went back to the team and said, okay, that's a new work item we need to develop, right? So that was the beginning. And then when the first Kanban boards on the team level popped up, so they were using a physical board in the beginning. So what these guys did, they were just cloning the card. So you could see a card on the large board, and they were cloning this card. They made a copy of it, took the copy to the team board, put it into one of these swim lanes, and then they chopped it down. And that's how they managed to coordinate. If this answers your question.
Yes, perfect. Another question that is come up is that you showed the project Kanban board and you showed the WIP limits on that board. Now, the WIP limits, were they applicable across all the teams? And I guess the answer is
Um,
yes for that.
Yeah, yes, they were. Yes, they were, more or less. So, I mean, there was some kind of logic behind this, how they applied the whip limits, but to be honest, I can't remember the real logic. But
Okay.
if you take a closer if you take a closer look at how's it called, the whip limits on the project board, I think one thing you can see quite clearly here. So in the upstream, they are having quite high whip limits, and the more to the right you are on the board, the lower the whip limits are. And that's a pattern I see very, very often, because in the upstream, what you're doing here is you're weighing your options, right? So you need to juggle more balls. You need some balls in the air, actually, right? And that's the reason why you usually have larger bit limits there. And when it comes into development, I don't want to view my development work as an option. So I want to realize it, actually, right? So the whip limit goes down, and when you're rolling out, okay, the whip limit is usually 1, right? And you could also see this on the project board here. So in the upstream, high whip limits, and then they are going down. That's, yeah, one pattern I see very, very often. I don't know, maybe that's also true for your board, Mahesh.
So,
Or
in fact, I was going to mention this myself, and I have seen this happen with our customers also a lot. That I think they should probably all, we should make it mandatory for them to attend this webinar before they start their Kanban, this board design, because I think the more common situation that we see is that teams start with the companies start with the team level board first, and then
yeah,
they slowly realize the problem of coordination of the upfront planning that is needed, and then they start to build the higher level boards, and so they kind of go bottom up. uh, we also did the same thing ourselves. So we started with the dev board first, and then as we worked through the actual Kanban and actual issues that we were facing in our own development teams, then we realized the need for the upstream Kanban board. And in fact, I have spoken of that in other conferences as well. That the coordination and the planning is so important, and that, I think, as you rightly said, Kanban facilitates so nicely. It doesn't matter what the teams are doing. They could be doing Kanban, they could be doing Scrum, they could be doing Waterfall. But the ability to abstract, or the ability to define the high level interaction and the high level overall product and the service delivery, and be able to then build a planning board at that level, that makes it so much simpler to do so.
Yeah, and there's one more side effect, which is actually, I think, not really intuitive, but the change energy you need to start for with a board for 200 people is much lower than you will if you start on the team level, because on the team level you have to convince each and every team that they want to do Kanban and that they need to do this, and so on and so on. You don't need to do this on flight level 3, for instance. You can easily introduce Kanban for 200 people, and yeah, for the teams, the day does not change that much. So it's also yeah, a very lean change approach actually.
Right, absolutely. Another question that is, I think, more relevant to probably to Swift Kanban is that in the hierarchy, if at the lowest level the work is put on hold, will that trace back up to the highest level and flag that the highest level item there is a risk? So currently, no, we don't have an immediate way to say that there is a risk. We have considered that option, but we have not yet implemented that. But that's a great feature suggestion that I would
Yeah,
take as an input from your side. Sorry,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Please go ahead.
That's actually a very good question. I've seen a lot of different approaches here. Um, Yeah, I've actually seen everything. So if you plot something on the team port, on the level 2 port, that they make it immediately visible on the top level port. So they block the item also there. However, often it's not blocked because often on a higher level item, you have multiple teams working on it, and maybe only one team is blocked and not all the teams. So then people, or what I've seen quite often is that people are having two kind of blockers on the high level board. So on the low level board, you have a blocker. I cannot work on this item. And on the high level board, they use, for instance, a different colored sticky note, like orange instead of red or so, which is one or not all, so not the whole, not the entire work item is blocked, but there is some risk associated to it that one of the teams might, yeah, delay finishing of this work. Yeah, I've really seen quite a lot of different approaches here, and I think it totally depends on the environment, how they manage it. But I really like the idea to signal that there's risk, like which means it's not blocked, but there's potential risk associated. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely, and as you I think described it very nicely. I think this is currently what we do is really through the coordination between various teams. So as you can see here, this is shows a block card, whereas if at a higher level, if there is a story that needs to be flagged because of a blockage underneath, then you could flag a card, and that
Oh,
is done. Currently, it is done manually, but I take the suggestion from the question that has been asked, that potentially this could be something that is done automatically to highlight that there might be some risk.
yeah,
Uh, and
that
and
makes
uh,
totally
uh,
sense.
and I would want to point out to a lot of work that Klaus has done on blocker clustering, which is one of my favorite topics, because that's something that we have also done a lot of work on in terms of blocking analysis and the amount of time that's lost in blocking. Uh, I'd encourage all of the people on the webinar to read up Klaus's articles on blocker clustering and blocking analysis. So Klaus, did you have anything else to add?
Hmm?
Uh,
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So there are a few other questions, but we are at 10 minutes past the hour, more than that actually. So I will stop here. We will take other questions and respond to them offline. Uh, I once again want to thank you, Klaus, for a wonderful webinar. I think the more you listen to the message that you have just set up here, the more it makes sense. And I think uh, I would recommend to everybody to see this webinar. We will obviously make the recordings and the slides available, and of course encourage you to talk to Klaus as well as to us for any questions that you might have in terms of overall Kanban implementation approach and Kanban board design, and the analysis that goes in to have an effective Kanban implementation. So Klaus, thank you very much. It was a wonderful presentation.
Thanks. Thanks for having me, Mahesh.
It's a pleasure is all mine. And thank you to all of you who attended the webinar today. I really appreciate that. We will follow up with an email with the links for the slides and the recordings very shortly. And with that, I'd like to close the webinar. Goodbye.
Thank you. Cheers.